You know, the next time you see one of those massive trucks rumbling down the highway, packed with goods headed for restaurants or maybe hospitals or schools, just think about it for a second. It's not just a delivery truck, it's actually a really critical link in this kind of silent but essential backbone of our entire economy. And today we're taking a deep dive into that world, fascinating, really competitive, and often kind of overlooked world of food service distribution. Specifically, we're going to unpack the recent buzz around two absolute titans in this space. Performance Food Group, you'll hear us call it PFG, and US Foods. Our mission really is to try and understand the implications of a potential merger between these two giants, what it could mean for the industry, the broader market, and maybe most importantly for the thousands of people on the ground, making those crucial deliveries every single day.
Yeah, it's vital to grasp the sheer scale we're talking about here. I mean, when companies this big even think about combining forces, it's way more than just a business headline. It sends ripples, big ones, across the entire supply chain. It impacts everything from what products are available to maybe even the prices we end up paying for our meals out.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's get to know these players a bit better. Maybe starting with Performance Food Group, PFG. So, picture this. A company that traces its roots all the way back to 1885. Started by a food peddler, James Capers, down in Richmond, Virginia, that's PFG. It grew out of a company called Pocahontas Foods, eventually becoming Performance Food Group in 1987. Now they're headquartered in Goochland County, Virginia, and they trade publicly, NYSE, PFGC. And that public listing, it really signals their huge size and, financial stability. They're up there in the S&P 400, Fortune 500, big players.
Definitely. And the scale is, frankly, staggering.
To really get a sense of PFG's current scale, just imagine a company moving over, $30 billion worth of food every year?
That's right, 30 billion.
I mean, that's more than the GDP of some small countries, right? It just shows how fundamental they are to kitchens and institutions across America. Back in 2021, they had something like over 22,000 employees spread across three main divisions: Performance Food Service, Vistar, and PFG, Customized. And their journey has involved some really significant strategic moves over the years. Like you mentioned, they were acquired by Wellspring Capital Management and Blackstone Group back in 2008, then merged with Vistar and Roma Foods before going public in 2015.
And they haven't stopped growing. They've been really active on the acquisition front too, right? Picking up major players like Cormark just a few years ago in 2021 and Reinhardt Food Service in 2019, constantly expanding that footprint.
Exactly. They're always looking to grow. And then you've got US Foods. Now, this company started officially in 1989 as US Food Service, then rebranded to US Foods in 2011. Their headquarters are up in Rosemont, Illinois.
And just like PFG, they're a publicly traded giant. Also on the NYSE, symbol USFD. They operate on a very similar scale. We're talking roughly $24 billion in annual revenue and about 25,000 employees as of 2022. And their product catalog is just enormous, over 350,000 national and their own exclusive brand items.
Wow, 350,000.
Yeah, it's huge. Their customer base is incredibly broad, too. Over 250,000 different places they serve. Everything from your local independent restaurant, multi-unit chains, healthcare facilities, hotels, government agencies, schools, you name it.
So pretty much anywhere that serves food.
Pretty much. And what's interesting is that, like PFG, some of the entities that eventually became U.S. Foods have really deep roots. Some started way back in the 19th century, like John Sexton and Company in 1883.
Okay.
And yeah, similar to PFG, again, U.S. Foods has a long history of acquisitions too. Big ones, like buying SGA Food Group for, I think it was $1.8 billion in 2019.
Right. So, okay, if you're keeping score at home, what this really means is that both PFG and US Foods are just these colossal players in what's called broadline food service distribution.
Right.
When we say broadline food service distributor, we mean these companies deliver just an incredibly vast array of products, right?
Exactly.
Everything from fresh produce, meats, canned goods, frozen stuff, even cleaning supplies. Basically, everything a restaurant or a hospital or a school kitchen needs to operate day to day.
That's the idea. And just to put them in context within the whole competitive landscape, currently, Cisco is the undisputed number one, the biggest. PFG usually sits at number 2, and U.S. Foods is generally considered number 3.
Okay.
But it's not like it's set in stone. It's actually quite dynamic. Those top spots have actually shifted around over the last decade or so. Each of these three giants has held the top position at different times.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting today. The latest buzz, the recent reports, indicate that U.S. Foods is showing, well, let's say, strong interest in potentially taking over PFG. And this potential move. That's really the core of our deep dive today. What's driving this?
Well, the motivation behind a strategic play like this seems pretty clear, actually. First off, these companies are remarkably similar in size if you look at their enterprise value. They're peers, in a way. The main goal for U.S. Foods, if they pursued this merger, would likely be to create a combined entity massive enough to hit around, say, $100 billion in revenue.
Wow, $100 billion.
Yeah, and that number, that would be a real game changer. It would effectively push them past Cisco, making them the largest broadline food service distributor in the U.S. They'd potentially control something like 18% of the total market.
That's a significant chunk.
It is. And the main drivers for wanting to do a merger this big are pretty straightforward, really. You get greater economies of scale, which is huge. You hope to improve those notoriously razor-thin margins you see in this industry. And you leverage the distribution overlap between the two companies for some serious efficiencies.
Makes sense.
It's also seen pretty clearly as a deliberate move to better compete with Cisco, maybe even sort of fend off Cisco's dominance. And what's also quite interesting is the potential strategic fit. PFG, for example, has real strength in certain niche areas where U.S. Foods might be a bit weaker, like independent pizzerias or convenience stores.
Ah, okay.
So it's not just about getting bigger. It could also be about expanding and diversifying their product lines and their customer reach, a broader portfolio.
That definitely sounds like an ambitious goal, especially given how competitive things already are. But is this just about the numbers, the scale, or is there more to this sort of strategic dance? And I guess we should emphasize again, despite how compelling that strategic fit might sound on paper, this is all apparently still in the pretty early stages.
That's right. Very early.
And both companies have, understandably declined to comment officially on any of these reports.
Standard procedure, really. Now, connecting this to the bigger picture, though, any deal of this size, merging number 2 and number 3, would absolutely face intense regulatory scrutiny, huge antitrust concerns. That's probably the biggest hurdle here.
Yeah, that raises a really important question, doesn't it? Especially when you look back at history. I mean, we just need to remember the attempted merger between Cisco and U.S. Foods back in 2013.
Yeah.
That was valued at, what, $8.2 billion. And that deal, as many people listening probably recall, was ultimately blocked. A U.S. federal judge stopped it in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And the reasoning was very specific.
Yeah.
The judge said the combined company would control something like 75% of the U.S. food service industry, just too much market power, basically stifling competition.
Right.
So Cisco eventually had to terminate that merger agreement and just walk away.
Exactly. And that history, it casts a really long shadow over any new attempts at consolidation in this space. Regulators are almost certainly going to review this potential U.S. Foods PFG deal extremely closely, looking for very similar antitrust issues.
You have to assume so.
And honestly, this level of scrutiny, it's expected pretty much regardless of which administration is in power in Washington. Why? Because the industry is already so consolidated among the comp players.
Right.
So a block is definitely possible. Or maybe they'd require significant divestitures, forcing them to sell off certain parts of the business in specific markets to keep competition alive. That could seriously reshape the deal or maybe even kill it altogether.
Okay, so that's the high-level business strategy, the regulatory maze. But let's shift focus a bit. Beyond the balance sheets and the legal battles, what does all this potential upheaval mean for the thousands of people on the front lines? What about the employees? The drivers, the warehouse workers, the folks who are out there every single day making sure the food actually gets where it needs to go?
Yeah, that's a crucial question. For employees, especially those currently at PFG, based on these early reports, the immediate impact is probably just heightened uncertainty. Because remember, the deal isn't done. It's not even officially proposed yet, and it's certainly not guaranteed. So you can expect ongoing speculation, maybe some stock price volatility if you own shares, and just general nerves among the staff about possible changes or, potential cost cuts down the line.
Understandable.
Looking a bit further out, let's say hypothetically the merger does happen. Then typically you'd expect to see overlapping operations being streamlined, especially in areas like distribution centers, logistics, maybe some corporate functions like HR or finance.
Right, redundancies.
Yeah, redundancies and some restructuring are often possible, unfortunately. It's part of those typical M&A cost-saving efforts companies look for. But on the flip side, there could also be opportunities, right? For employees who have skills that cross different divisions, maybe in logistics, e-commerce, technology, they might find chances to step up and lead in newly blended divisions within the larger combined company.
Okay, this next part I found truly eye-opening. We actually managed to talk to someone who's been inside both of these companies, behind the wheel, actually making deliveries for both PFG and US Foods at different times.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and what they shared gives this fascinating, really ground level glimpse into the very real day-to-day differences between working for PFG versus US Foods. It highlights just how varied the same job can be, even depending on the specific location, let alone the company.
That's a valuable insight. What did they say?
Well, take pay, for example. Our driver found pretty significant differences. At one unionized PFG location they worked at in San Diego, the hourly wage was notably higher, like almost $34 an hour.
Wow. Okay.
But then, at a U.S. Foods location nearby, in Vista, the hourly rate was much lower, around $24 an hour, though that one did include medical and dental benefits, so different compensation structures.
Right. Trade-offs. So.
Exactly. And then, interestingly, another U.S. Foods facility they worked at, this one in Phoenix, used a totally different system called component pay.
Ah, component pay. I've heard of that.
Yeah. Earnings were based on the specific route, the number of stops, how much you unloaded, the miles driven. And the upshot was, if you were really efficient, you could potentially finish your route earlier, but still make the same pay for the day. So very different philosophies on how you pay people and incentivize efficiency.
That is really different. Shows there's no one way these companies operate.
Absolutely. And beyond just the pay, the actual daily grind itself varied wildly too. Our driver highlighted that PFG in San Diego, that location apparently offered what they considered the easiest routes in food service. Fewer stops, maybe 6 to 10, and lighter case counts, around 800.
Okay, sounds manageable.
Yeah. But in stark contrast, U.S. Foods in Phoenix typically had more stops, maybe 10 to 13, and way more cases, like 1,200. Although a lot of the chain restaurant deliveries there were palletized, which could actually make them easier to handle sometimes.
Oh, okay. Different types of deliveries.
Right. And then U.S. Foods back in the San Diego area in Vista, that presented a totally different challenge. Highly varied routes could be 15, even 20 stops. Cases could range from just 5 up to 150 at a single stop. It required a lot more, as the driver put it, digging through the truck to find the specific product for each stop.
Wow.
So it really illustrates how food distribution driver isn't just one monolithic job, you know? The daily reality can be vastly different based on the company, the location, even the specific routes you get assigned.
That paints a very clear picture.
Yeah.
What about equipment or facilities?
Yeah, even that varied. PFG in San Diego often used smaller, like 32-foot trucks, usually with lift gates. U.S. Foods in Phoenix, they consistently used the big 48-foot tractor trailers. And think about your sleep schedule being dictated by your employer. PFG in San Diego had a relatively manageable 5 a.m. start time.
Okay, not too bad.
But U.S. Foods, depending on the location, could demand overnight starts, sometimes as early as midnight or even 10 p.m. the night before in Phoenix.
Oof, that's rough. Disruptive.
Totally. And as for the facilities, the actual yards, PFG's San Diego yard was surprisingly described almost like an outdoor yard in somebody's backyard. No real main HQ feel at that specific location, apparently.
Ah.
That was a stark contrast to the seemingly well-maintained facilities the driver experienced at U.S. Foods in both Phoenix and Vista. Though they did note PFG's facility over in the City of Industry was really good. So variation even within PFG.
Right, location matters.
Definitely. And the driver also noted distinct differences in management styles and, crucially, equipment quality across the locations. U.S. Foods in Phoenix apparently earned top marks for having the best equipment. New trucks, trailers, good dollies.
Always important for the job.
For sure. U.S. Foods in Vista came in second, good pallet jacks there. PFG in San Diego was third in this driver's ranking for equipment. Pallet jacks were hit and miss, and the tractors were apparently not good and needed improvement.
So, synthesizing all that, the driver's overall experience, where did they rank them? Based on that feedback, their personal ranking put U.S. Foods in Phoenix as #1 overall.
Oh.
PFG in San Diego came in as a very close second, and U.S. Foods in Vista, San Diego, was third.
Right.
And that comprehensive comparison, it factored in everything, right? From the money and the routes to the trucks, the start times, the facilities, even how they felt management treated them. What this driver's comparison truly illuminates, I think, is that the operational philosophies, maybe even the corporate cultures, can vary significantly between these industry giants and even within them. And that directly impacts everything from a driver's sleep schedule to their daily physical effort to their overall job satisfaction.
Yeah, that perspective really brings it home. It highlights the real-world operational differences between these companies and therefore the very tangible potential implications for the current employees. Everything from their specific job roles to their daily working conditions could change quite a bit if these two were to actually integrate.
Absolutely. And the bottom line for employees right now in a situation like this is really just uncertainty. That's the key word. There's no official deal yet, and as we discussed, a thorough regulatory review is highly likely if one is proposed. However, if the merger does eventually happen, while yes, some operational overlaps and possible redundancies are a potential reality, there could also be growth opportunities in those new blended divisions we talked about.
Yeah.
So probably the best advice is just to stay proactive. Maybe brush up on relevant skills, stay plugged into internal company communications, try to plan ahead as best you can. That gives you the best possible footing during any kind of transition period.
Okay, so wrapping things up, we've taken a close look today at the just immense scale of Performance Food Group and U.S. Foods. We've explored the powerful strategic drivers that seem to be propelling this potential merger talk. And we've also delved into the very significant regulatory hurdles it would almost certainly face, especially given the industry precedents. And importantly, we heard that really valuable real-world perspective on what all this means or could mean for the countless individuals who actually make the daily operations of these giants possible.
Yeah, this whole exploration, I think it truly illustrates how these complex, high-level business dealings can ripple right down through these vast industries. They affect everything from, global supply chains right down to the daily lives and future careers of individual employees. It's just a good reminder that even the food that ends up on our plates relies on this massive, intricate, and constantly evolving network.
Definitely. And as we wrap up our deep dive today, here's maybe a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider. Given that history of regulatory blocks like the failed Cisco U.S. Foods deal, and considering the really nuanced operational differences between PFG and U.S. Foods that our driver highlighted, will this potential consolidation actually reshape the industry the way U.S. Foods might envision? Or is it more likely to hit those familiar roadblocks? And even if it does somehow get through all the hurdles, how quickly could that dream combination of portfolios and supposed synergies actually translate into tangible changes? Changes for customers, yes, but also for the thousands and thousands of individuals behind the wheel in the warehouses. Something to think about.